Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at the concept of the collective dream in the Toltec tradition. After having listened to this video, unless you already do so, you will see much of what most people take for granted in a completely new light. In short, reality is not what it appears to be, and most of the rules and norms that we are born into are relative. And we are free to break those agreements that we have with the dream that, upon conscious reflection, we realize don't resonate with us. In the Toltec tradition, the idea of the collective dream refers to the shared reality that human beings unconsciously construct through belief, domestication, and social agreement. To make this absolutely clear, in the Toltec tradition, life is quite literally described as a dream. Not metaphorically, but as a direct reflection of how consciousness creates and interprets reality. However, this dream is not an illusion in the sense of being imaginary or fabricated out of nothing. Rather, it is an agreement about what is real that is shaped by language, symbols, values, and inherited beliefs. From the Toltec point of view, most of what we take to be reality is actually a dream, not because it's false, but because it is shaped by human perception and reinforced by social consensus. Another thing that is worth emphasizing is that dreaming itself is not the problem. Unconscious dreaming, based on lies and fear, is. The goal is not to stop dreaming, but to dream with awareness, reclaiming the ability to create a life rooted in clarity and love. The Toltec tradition is an ancient spiritual path from Mexico, rooted in the teachings of seers and sages who viewed life as a work of art. It isn't a religion, but a way of life, focused on awareness, personal freedom, and transforming perception. At its core, it teaches that we live in a dream shaped by belief, and that true freedom comes from waking up and choosing to dream consciously. What we are talking about here is ultimately about our relationship with reality and the limitations we accept as a consequence. To understand this, it's important to understand that there is no sharp line separating the inner from the outer. Everything that is going on within us has an effect on the reality we experience. And for a very long time, the collective dream has appeared much more fixed and unchangeable than it actually is. Every person is born into a world where this dream already exists. It is passed down through generations, like a script for a play. Parents, teachers, religious leaders, governments, and the media all contribute to maintaining and reinforcing this collective script. As children, we do not question it. We learn to participate in it automatically, taking in the rules, roles, and expectations without much awareness. It is often difficult to grasp how deeply this runs. Even if the details may be harder to grasp, we can quite easily get a surface-level understanding of, for example, how laws and customs or gender roles differ from one country to another. We can even get this surface-level understanding of how one culture differs in its approach to aspects of life such as government, individualism versus collectivism, how we relate to emotional expression, or how cultural views differ on more abstract concepts such as right and wrong or good and evil. What can be harder to see is, for example, how in our very interactions with those around us, we learn to relate to concepts such as freedom or duty, how comfortable we are with taking risks or talking to strangers, how open-minded we are, or how natural our place in the world feels to us. Some of these aspects of life are shaped more by society and culture, while others are shaped more by the relationships that form us, mainly with relatives, peers, and authority figures. And some of them pertain more to our relationship with ourselves, and others to our relationship with those around us or the world at large. This is also something that mainly happens unconsciously, even if it is possible to consciously allow oneself to become socialized into a specific life dream. And if it's a dream that is truly chosen freely and promotes freedom and happiness on the person's own terms, then there is no problem. From an early age, many of us, for example, absorb the belief that our value depends on how others see us. We shape our behavior to please, appear happy and successful, avoid rejection, and gain approval, often at the cost of authenticity. This belief isn't natural or inevitable, it's part of the personal version of the collective dream. It tells us that being accepted is more important than being real, and it keeps us trapped in roles instead of relationships. This, of course, goes back to ancient survival strategies, but it is reinforced by both society and culture, as well as the need for approval from our parents. As many know, it is also reinforced by the polished facades that people display through social media. Let's also look at an example of something that is viewed as just part of how things are in many countries, namely that of a record of non-payment. This is a formal mark that someone failed to pay a bill. On the surface, it seems neutral or factual. If you fail to pay your bills, there needs to be a consequence. However, in many cases, such a record follows a person for years, limiting their access to housing, loans, or even employment. And once someone has begun to slip, heavy fees are often attached to the initial bills, trapping the individual in a state of permanent debt. Within the collective dream, it also often becomes a symbol of failure, irresponsibility, or even personal worth. Whatever your personal views are about this, it is a fact that this is not an absolute truth. It's a shared belief that we've domesticated ourselves into. In Toltec terms, it's a story reinforced by the collective dream, one that continues to punish long after the actual event. Not because it must, but because we've agreed to keep dreaming it that way. What you can also see here is that one aspect of the dream, that of the record of non-payment, also comes with many smaller parts, such as morals or judgments, that are just as much constructs within the dream as the main issue. The big point here is that before we start questioning them, we regard these aspects of the human experience as natural parts of life, even if, when we start looking more closely at them, we realize that they are constructs. They are something that we've simply collectively agreed upon, usually without knowing that we have entered an agreement. This process of learning the collective dream is what the Toltecs call domestication. In the same way that animals are domesticated to perform according to human expectations, people are trained to act, speak, think, and feel in ways that align with the collective norms. Through this domestication, rewards and punishments are used to teach what is acceptable and what is not. Approval is given when one conforms, and disapproval or shame is used to correct behavior that deviates. Over time, this external control becomes internal. People no longer need outside authority to enforce the dream. They police themselves with their own inner judge. It's important to observe yourself if you want to understand just how deeply this runs, because we are usually not truly aware of the scripts that run in our heads, or that they were chosen for us rather than being products of us making conscious choices. You need to get to know more of yourself and start separating what is truly you from what you have just picked up in your interactions with the world. At the heart of the collective dream is language. Language is a powerful tool, but in the Toltec view, it is also a double-edged sword. It gives humans the ability to name, categorize, and conceptualize the world, but it also distances us from direct experience. Words are symbols, not the reality itself, and when we confuse the two, we begin to live in a dream made of symbols instead of actual truth. We believe in the labels rather than the living reality behind them. Have you ever noticed the tendency, either in yourself or others, to confuse having labeled something with having an actual understanding of it? That is what we are talking about here, and it runs deep. Once a person believes in a label, they begin to act in accordance with it. If they are told they are smart, stupid, beautiful, ugly, good, or bad, these words begin to form part of their identity. They believe they are this or that, and they conform to the expectations that come with those words. This is how the dream becomes personalized. The collective dream becomes the personal dream. Yet both are based not on what is real, but on shared and inherited agreements about what is real. What can be seen here is how all nuance gets lost. A person's uniqueness, history, and lived experience get ignored in favor of mental constructs that say, this person is this or that, often based solely on superficial characteristics. And this can, of course, also be applied to other parts of the human experience than those that have to do with how we judge others. We say that life, the world, or this or that group of people are this or that way. And we think that we have said something meaningful when all we really have done is create a linguistic construct inside our heads. The Toltec view sees the shared dream as a kind of virtual reality. It is not wrong or evil, but it is not the whole truth either. It is a structure that keeps people bound to roles and expectations that often limit freedom and joy. It creates suffering because it teaches people to seek approval, to fear rejection, and to base their worth on external validation. It convinces them that love must be earned, that they are not good enough as they are, and that life is a competition for worth. As we saw in the beginning, the collective dream includes agreements about morality, politics, religion, gender, race, success, failure, and every other domain of human life. These agreements vary across cultures, but the mechanism remains the same. People inherit belief systems, internalize them, and then live by them without ever truly questioning them. In this sense, the collective dream is a kind of inherited mind, a structure of thought and meaning that lives through the people it inhabits. In Toltec wisdom, awakening means to become aware that you are dreaming, and to recognize that the dream you are living is not the only possible one. Once this awareness arises, you gain the ability to change the dream. This doesn't mean changing the entire society, but beginning with your own mind. You can choose to let go of inherited agreements that no longer serve you. You can begin to speak your own truth, rather than repeating the lies of the collective dream. You can choose not to believe in stories that cause suffering, whether they are about yourself, others, or the world. Remember clearly that none of these things are facts, but agreements that we've made collectively, and that therefore have become parts of the collective dream. To break free from the dream, the Toltecs emphasize the importance of unlearning. This process begins by recognizing that most of the thoughts in your mind are not your own. They are echoes of the voices of parents, teachers, priests, and authorities, etc. These voices have become internalized, but they do not reflect your true nature. Your true self is beyond labels, stories, and fears. One of the most central teachings in Toltec tradition is that humans are creators. Through the use of attention and language, people create their own experience of life. When attention is placed on fear, limitation, and judgment, the dream that results is filled with suffering. When attention is placed on love, openness, and awareness, the dream begins to change. This shift in attention is not merely about positive thinking. It is about reclaiming the power of perception. You cannot control the collective dream, but you can choose whether to participate in it. You can withdraw your energy from it and use your attention to create a personal dream that is rooted in authenticity, presence, and love. To begin creating a personal dream rooted in authenticity, the first step is to become aware of the voice in your mind and question its truth. This voice, often referred to in the Toltec teachings as the voice of knowledge, is the primary mechanism through which the collective dream operates. This voice constantly comments, judges, interprets, and narrates reality. It is not silent, and it does not rest. Most people come to identify with this voice so deeply that they believe it is who they are. But in reality, it is just a program. It is a mental structure built from layers of agreements. The danger of the voice of knowledge is not in having thoughts, but in believing them without question. The Toltecs teach that most of what we believe is not true, even though it feels true. The mind is easily deceived by repetition. If you hear something enough times, you begin to accept it as reality. This is how the collective dream perpetuates itself. However, the Toltec path is not one of blame. It is not about condemning society or rejecting everything you've learned. Instead, it is about discernment. It is about learning to see clearly and to recognize the difference between what is real and what is just a story. Reality, in the Toltec sense, is not something you define. It is something you perceive directly, without the filter of language. When the mind becomes quiet, when the stories are dropped, what remains is presence. And in that presence, there is no need to define or explain. Life simply is. Awakening from the collective dream does not mean withdrawing from the world. On the contrary, it means living in the world without being ruled by it. You can participate in society, engage with people, and express yourself fully, but you do it from a place of inner freedom. You are no longer trying to fit into a script. You are writing your own. The collective dream will still exist. It will still speak through television, education, politics, and culture. But once you see it for what it is, it no longer has power over you. It becomes background noise rather than the main event. You can witness it without being caught in it. In Toltec wisdom, the goal is not to destroy the dream, but to dream consciously. To recognize that dreaming is a function of human awareness, and that dreaming with awareness is a path of mastery. When you know you are dreaming, you are free to dream something new. This is the real meaning of spiritual power. Not control over others, but clarity within yourself. The collective dream, then, is not a fixed thing. It is a dynamic, evolving field shaped by human agreement. And every time someone wakes up from it, even for a moment, the dream changes. Each act of awareness is like a small crack in the wall. Over time, enough cracks let in the light. In the Toltec tradition, this is how transformation happens. Not through revolution or force, but through clarity. Through the quiet courage of those who choose to see and who live from what they see. These people are not special or separate, they are simply awake. And their presence becomes a new kind of dream, not one of fear and conformity, but of love and truth. This is not abstract philosophy. It is something lived, moment to moment. It is a return to your own authority, to your own experience, and to the direct perception of life. The Toltecs do not ask you to believe anything. They ask you to see. And once you see, everything changes. In conclusion, the Toltec concept of the collective dream invites us to question the reality we've been taught to accept without reflection. From early childhood, we are domesticated into a world shaped by inherited beliefs, social expectations, and cultural agreements. This shared dream feels real because it is reinforced by language, repetition, and the voices around us. But it is not absolute. It is one possible version of reality, shaped by perception rather than truth. By becoming aware of this dream, we begin to recognize the inner structures that hold it in place. Stories about who we are, what is possible, and how life should be. These stories can be rewritten. We cannot change the entire collective dream at once, but we can change our participation in it. Through awareness, attention, and presence, we can begin to create a personal dream rooted in authenticity instead of fear. This path is not about escaping the world, but engaging with it from a new place, one of clarity, choice, and freedom. As more people wake up, the collective dream evolves, not through conflict or resistance, but through awareness. What we see is not a fixed reality, but a dream we are all dreaming together. And once we know this, we are free to dream it differently. Finally, what we've been talking about in this video are, for the most part, the tangible manifestations of a much deeper truth about reality. We will conclude the video by exploring this as far as is possible within the limits of language. Once we recognize that the world we live in is a dream, something even deeper begins to stir. Beneath the layers of belief, story, and identity lies a truth echoed in ancient teachings across traditions. As we've touched upon, reality itself is not fixed, but fluid, shaped by perception, directed by attention. The Toltecs call it dreaming. The Hermetic tradition calls it mentalism. Both point to the same insight. The world as we know it is a projection of mind. What we call reality is not the totality of what exists, but a narrow band of perception shaped by the five senses, filtered by language, and reinforced by collective agreement. We mistake this limited stream of information for the whole, and we identify so completely with it that we forget what we are. But behind the sensory field, beyond the personal dream and the collective one, is awareness itself, silent, spacious, and awake. To see this clearly is not to reject the world, but to realize that it is not as solid or fixed as it seems. When attention is reclaimed from the noise of belief and story, perception begins to open. Reality softens. Time loosens its grip. The world responds differently, not because it has changed, but because the dreamer is no longer asleep. In that moment of clarity, even if brief, we remember something essential. We are not trapped within a dream. The dream is unfolding within us and through us. And as awareness grows, we gain the ability not just to witness the dream, but to shape it, deliberately, creatively, and in alignment with what is true. This is the invitation, to wake up from the collective dream, and to live your life not as a reaction to inherited stories, but as a conscious expression of your true nature. The world may remain noisy, the dream may continue to swirl, but you, quietly and clearly, will be free. If you want to delve more deeply into the Toltec tradition, we have other videos that go deeper into agreements and domestication. We also have a video about self-observation based on the fourth way system, a path of inner development that integrates mind, emotions, and body through conscious attention. These are available on the end screen right now, together with a video on mentalism as it is understood in Hermetic philosophy, which will broaden your understanding of what our reality actually is and our relationship with it. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe, and check out the description and comment section to see other things that we do. Thank you for your time.